Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 249 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melissa Lieberman, and today we're talking about how to think about business investments as an independent consultant. Such a great topic, especially for this time of year. Before we do that, though, I thought it would be fun to share with you what I am going to call a rookie mistake. I think it's always fun to explain, even if you've been in business as long as I have, mistakes are part of the process. And in this case, it's actually a mistake I made with Growth Atlas, the new brand I'm building for my planners and journals and paper, physical products. Anyway, I thought I would share this quick story with you, and then we'll dive into today's topic about business investments. But as you might be aware, I've been sharing my new brand's Growth Atlas. I've been talking about it on this podcast, the quarterly business planner, the business brain journal, the project map desk pad. I talk about it. I share it on my email when I send that out on Fridays. And it's been a little bit tricky because I didn't have my website going immediately and Amazon wasn't fully set up, when the products were live, all the things that we're sort of trying to figure out, in that kind of a launch. And anyway, so I often explain, just go to Amazon and don't do this, by the way, but I'm going to tell you what I was saying. Go to Amazon, search Growth Atlas, and you'll find my products. That seems pretty straightforward. That's the name of my brand. When I do it, I see those products. I've tested it. It works. However, what I've found, and my rookie mistake, is that people have been doing this and my competitors' products come up. So not my products. My products are probably listed, but they're so far down the page because they're new that it ends up showing my competitors' products. So some people are buying those thinking, what I'm sharing with them. And then on top of it, how this all sort of unraveled is I also found out that someone had taken what I said, what I just described to you, and then they've repeated it. And so now their audience is finding these products and buying the competitors' products. I should probably find out who that owns that company and they owe me a commission. But anyway, the rookie mistake is you cannot search on Amazon in that way. It will probably bring up your competitors' products if yours are new. So it's always something, right? I could be really upset and frustrated with myself that for 4 months, some people have been finding the wrong products and then others are compounding it. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's a rookie mistake for sure. And learning all the intricacies of selling on Amazon is definitely no small feat. So chalk it up to a learning lesson and moving on, right? So the actual answer to find my products, if you are looking for them, please do not buy the ones that are not mine, that are like a dark blue color, most of them. Mine are black with gold lettering. One is called the Quarterly Business Planner. One is called the Business Brain Journal, and the other is called the Project Map Desk Pad. And the best way to do it is to go to growthatlas.solutions, and that is my website. And on that website, you will see a link that says Shop All Tools. And when you click that, then it will take you to like a very simple page where you can click a button and it will take you to Amazon. And that way you get the right thing. I'm not going to ever say again to search on the name of my brand and cause that same cascading set of issues. Anyway, it's always something, right? Living and learn. Okay, so with that, now let's go back to today's topic, which is thinking about business investments. Whether you're listening to this in the real time and we're about to start a new year, or you're listening to this in the future, this applies to both yearly planning and quarterly planning. And so really want to highlight the topic today of your business investments and some ways to think about this and mistakes to avoid. So specifically the agenda for today's episode. First, we're going to talk about what's an investment. So let's just get clear about what we're talking about today and also what isn't an investment so that we're on the same page as we go through this topic. Then we're going to talk next about why to invest in your business. Then I'll share with you 4 mistakes that you want to avoid when you're thinking about investing in your business. And then we'll move on to the 5 steps to build your investment strategy. And then we'll wrap it up with how to put the episode into action. So that is our agenda for today. As you might have guessed, the companion resource that goes with today's episode is the business planner, the quarterly business planner. This is a great paper tool, which there's so much science behind the benefit of actually writing instead of typing so that your brain slows down. You're able to think at the pace at which you write. And it gives you another way of really drilling in and thinking through what your business plan is for the coming year and quarter. So if you want to grab that, go to growthatlas.solutions and it will take you through a couple of links to Amazon where you can buy it there. All right. So remember, really, whether you use the planner or not, writing out your plans for this next year, for this next quarter on a piece of paper and taking advantage of the benefits that your brain gives you when you slow down and really think rather than typing or trying to get ChatGPT to write everything for you is an incredibly important benefit for you and, quite frankly, responsibility as a business owner. So that's a little plug there for business owner thinking time. Okay, so now let's move on to the first part of our agenda, which is what's an investment and what isn't. Just to be clear about what we're talking about today, I'm sure we're tracking here, but just to make sure, when I say investments, we're talking about things like things that you would pay money for and also things you would pay time for. And sometimes it's both money and time, right? These are things like outsourcing or delegating support in some fashion, having a coach or an advisor, tools or systems or automations that you paid subscriptions for, skills development, visibility and marketing assets, strategic partnerships. That's one you might not be thinking of right off the bat when I say investments. Investing in strategic partnerships. It doesn't even have to be financially. It most usually is time, right? Time and attention. And then also thinking time, CEO time. Those are investments as well. What I want to emphasize here is that investment isn't spending. And we'll talk more about what it is here in a second. But just to be clear, sometimes we think about, oh, what am I going to budget for? What am I going to spend on? And we want to be thinking about this differently than, what your office supplies are. This is an investments we're talking about here today. So why would you invest? Why would you spend money and time on your business? It might seem obvious, but let's call attention to this because so many of us don't have a purposeful plan around what our business investments are. So, an investment is something that increases revenue for you, increases your amount of time available, also increases your capacity. When I say capacity, it might be that you're investing in more time, of course, right? Such as subcontractors or delivery partners. That is one obvious capacity, but there are other ways to expand your capacity. And by that, I mean your emotional capacity and your mental capacity. These are things like being able to handle more uncertainty, being able to handle more doubt, being able to handle more fear. Investing in that emotional capacity can be incredibly important and such a lever for you to increase ultimately your financial results and your fulfillment results, the results of how fulfilled you are in the consultancy that you're building. And then mental capacity. That's another way investment can increase your mental capacity. When you're thinking about your business right now from the vantage point of a 100K earner or a 200K earner or a 400K earner, and you want to get yourself to 500K or 750 or a million, investing in your mental capacity to understand how people who make that amount of money think differently than you do, quite frankly, I would say is one of the most important investments to make. I'll give you a story about this. I know for sure one of the biggest investments I made that has made such a difference in the results I've been able to create in my business, which are longevity, sustainability, increasing revenue, high 6 figures, is that mental capacity, is the investments that I've made in working with coaches and advisors who have helped me to see that number one, this is possible. Number two, it doesn't have to involve such sacrifice that it's not worth it. And number three, the way that they think about things, the way they prioritize things, the way they see certain challenges in their business is just completely different than where I was, originally when I had hired those coaches at 100 or 200K. It's just such a different way of looking at things. So that's an example of what I'm talking about when it comes to mental capacity. And then another way to you can leverage an investment is to increase your fulfillment. And you might think about, the actual fulfillment you have when you're working with your clients and running your business, right? This ultimately is an investment in your own retention, your own sustainable business, your own longevity. Those are the types of investments we're talking about here and why you would want to invest in your business. It's not always the most obvious things that we're thinking about. It can be so many different areas that you think about when we're investing and accelerating your results and making your results more likely to happen and making your results more sustained and foundational to your business and to your own self transforming as a business owner. And when you think about investing, I want to highlight this because oftentimes we think about, am I going to invest? Meaning, am I going to spend the money? That's how we often think or frame that idea of investing in our business. But I want to say to you that you really want to look at both sides of the coin. What is the cost of me investing this money, this time in the solution? And also on the flip side, what is the cost of not investing? There is an opportunity cost of not investing. And most of the time, I hate using hyperboles, but honestly, most of the time, we don't think about the cost of not investing. We think about the cost of investing. And both of them are really crucial to consider. Ultimately, your job is to choose the most effective investments that are going to remove your biggest constraints and allow you to capture the ROI of that investment. And we'll talk more about a process you can use to do that. So, now let's talk about the mistakes to avoid. The number one mistake to avoid is not investing. Somehow, I think that one of the reasons why we do this is we still are thinking like an employee and we think we're getting a paycheck. And then we think that, are we going to take some money out of this paycheck to buy something? That's very often the way that consultants think about investing and spending money to make money, if you will, or spending money to accomplish some of those other things we were just talking about. When you don't invest, when you don't have a plan for investment, this is why your business stalls. This is why you might be recreating your corporate income or even a less than that. This is why, in a large part, because you're thinking like an employee does and how much you want to take out of your paycheck versus thinking about how can I set up my business to achieve the goals in the most effective way possible. The other mistake you want to avoid is not investing at the level of your goals. So sometimes we might invest in the very beginning of our business, kind of thinking of that as there's some costs to start a business. So then we get comfortable with paying a little bit of money up front to start a business, whether that's hiring someone to build a website for you or hiring a coach to help you get off on the right foot, those types of investments, or maybe a bookkeeper because we just know right from the start we don't want to deal with it. But at the same time, we don't think about those types of investments as we grow and we don't realize that there is more possibility for us, or we realize it but we're too afraid to spend the money to invest. That's the juncture where I often see people getting stuck. For me, I am constantly investing. In fact, I think I just made 2 5-figure investments, in the last 3 weeks or last 4 weeks, because I'm constantly looking at what will help accelerate my business results, what will help set my business up for the future, what will help to me to offload some of the things that are not where my zone of genius isn't necessary, what will help me to increase my level of fulfillment if I'm getting, too busier than I want to be and I want to be able to focus on my client work and my, creation and the things that contribute most to my business. What can I do to outsource other things like that? I'm constantly looking at that. Do I want to reinvest in my coach? Which the answer is always yes to that. So those are the types of things that when you're not investing at the level of your goals. Another way to look at this is when you think about someone who has achieved the goals that you want to achieve, where they are running a business, let's say with 50K months or 75K months or 100K months, ask yourself, what are they investing in? and think about your investment plan in a way to mimic what they might be investing in, not copy it exactly, right? You might not be exactly where they're at, but really thinking about what are they investing in? What would they be thinking about when they were at this juncture in business? And really thinking about this so much more purposefully than you might be doing right now. Another mistake to avoid is thinking that investments are an expense or money out of your pocket. Again, this goes back to this idea of what it might be to think about investment as an employee versus a business owner. Your investment should be an asset or a vehicle in your business, not something that's taking away from you. The fourth mistake to avoid is not having an intentional investment strategy and plan. And I'll share with you the steps to make that happen here in a moment, but being super clear and intentional about what your investment strategy will be. And then finally, the fifth mistake you want to avoid is what I'll call the non business owner investment mindset. And we've touched on these a little bit already in terms of employee mindset. But the ones that I want to point out to you more specifically here are number one, the hero complex. Sometimes we think, well, I better figure this out myself. I better, pay the price. And so we don't get help. We don't get the help of an advisor. We don't get the help of a coach. We think we haven't earned that right yet. And so we end up just stalling and delaying and making our lives a lot more difficult than they need to be. The other one is waiting for certainty before committing. So often we think, well, I'm not going to invest in this strategy because I don't know if it will work. That is not the question you want to be asking yourself. You want to be asking yourself, if I choose to make this certain investment, how will I make it work? And do I believe that whatever I'm investing in is the best vehicle to get me to where I want to go to? Those are higher quality questions, right? And then the last example of non business owner investment mindset is overthinking. I can't tell you the number of times people have come to me and said, oh, I've been thinking about this for a year, or I've been trying to decide what I should do, around whatever the topic is. And I say to them, imagine what you could have accomplished in the last 6 months while you've been wondering if this is the best approach or not. Not to shame anyone, of course, but more to say, listen, like the power of making quick decisions and implementing them and getting the feedback and then being able to adjust is worth every single penny than saving those pennies and trying to over engineer or trying to over analyze or trying to figure out what the perfect solution is going to be. Those are the mistakes that you want to avoid when you're thinking about business investments. Okay, now let's dive into the strategy, the 5-part strategy to help you. It's a framework to help you define your investment strategy for the coming year and quarter. This is a quarterly process and a yearly process. So, step one, identify your goals. Of course, it almost always starts there, right? What are your goals, both revenue wise, financially, utilization? How much time do you want to be spending working? What nature of work do you want? How will you measure fulfillment? Like, really look at it with a 360-degree lens, because this provides a filter for your investment decisions. Then you want to take the next step, which you probably won't be surprised, I'll say, if you've listened to this podcast for any period of time, but that is running what I'll call an investment mindset check and creating an aligned mindset. Before you start diving into what are you going to invest in, how much are you going to invest, why are you going to invest in that, it's critically important to really understand where is your current headspace, because most likely you've got some version of employee mindset operating. You've got some version of non business owner mindset operating. I say most likely because I even still have that. And I do this for a living, right? All day long, helping people with this kind of thing. So run an investment mindset check as step number 2. Because if you don't do this first, and you bring the same money stories and investment beliefs into the next steps that I'm going to share with you, you're going to end up building a plan that justifies the status quo. So that's why we want to do this mindset check first. Questions such as, what do I currently believe about investing in my business? As an aside, if you click on the link in the podcast player that says view full show notes, it'll take you to a page that has all of this written out for you. So you can just copy paste it or print it and do this work for yourself as you're building out your investment strategy. Okay, so number 1, what do I currently believe about investing in my business? Number two, what does a business owner who has achieved these goals think about investing? How much feels safe to invest and why? That helps you to really understand where your current ceiling is and why it is that. And does it make sense? I remember when I decided to become an executive coach and really invest in coaching certification, it was a 20,000, maybe 19,000 or $20,000 investment. I think up until that point, I probably invested, a few $1,000s here and there. That was a sizable increase from where I had been to where I was considering. It was incredibly scary. I got over the hump and decided to move forward with that investment because I decided that I was going to make this investment and I was going to turn it into hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. That even if it wasn't amazing, I was going to turn it into that. It was amazing, but I decided I was going to make it work and I did. And that's the mindset of someone who thinks about investing and, quite frankly, how to increase your whatever feels safe to invest. Another way that I think about it too is like, okay, back then when I was deciding to do that particular certification, I thought to myself, how many clients is it going to take for me to pay for this? And at the time, I think it was, I don't know, it was a lot based on that initial pricing that I had, maybe 10 or something. I don't know, maybe five. My pricing was so, so low at the beginning. But I just decided I will find a way, come hell or high water, that I will sign five additional clients to help pay for this and know that I'll compound the investment over and over again. And so those are some ways of thinking about these things. The next question you would want to answer for yourself in this investment mindset check is, where am I assuming I can't or it's too risky? These are the things where we just kind of mentally, subliminally have options off the table. We would never consider them. They seem irresponsible or not where we're at this level right now, or whatever that is, right? And so asking yourself, where have I made these rules up for myself that I don't even realize, so that you can be more intentional and honest with yourself as you're building this investment strategy. And then the last question I'll offer to you is, if I already trusted myself to create the return on investment, what would change about the decisions I'm making for my investments? So, those are some of the questions that you want to use to get awareness of your current mindset and to also build an intentional mindset around how you want to go into thinking about investments as you build up your investment strategy. And so that leads us then to step number three, to map your needs, to define or uncover, specify the needs that you have. So we know what the goals are, we have a mindset check, and now we're going to dive into building the actual strategy. And that next step starts with really mapping out what you need. So, based on your goals, your question for yourself would be, what must be different in the next quarter, the next year, for those outcomes to be inevitable? I'll say the question again. What must be different in the next quarter and in the next year for those outcomes, those goals that you set, to be inevitable? So, examples you might come up with are, I need more consistent lead flow. I need a stronger, more consistent, more predictable top of funnel, for example. I need to improve my close rate, or I need to improve my pricing, or I need to really start thinking as a business owner, not as a consultant or not as an employee. Some of those examples. And from there, now you know your needs. So now you're going to go on to step four, which is to choose the combination of your goals and your mindset and your needs. You're going to build out an investment plan. What are the most effective investments you could make to address the gap or the gaps that you identified? The one or two key, I mean, you've probably got a lot of gaps. We all do. But what is the one or two things what are those gaps that would, if you filled them, would move the needle for you? So this is where you choose those investments. And the prompts here are, what will I invest in? What will I not invest in? If my goal were already a done deal, what level of investment would I choose? Like, really getting clear for yourself about what it is. Now, I want to say something to you here that's really important. The question is not, should I invest? The question is, what will I invest in? I'm not saying to you, you need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. It might make sense for you where you're at and what your goals are, but you are running a business. You are not just generating a paycheck. So the question is, as a business owner, what will I invest in? Not should I invest in something? Then the fifth and final step of this framework to define your investment strategy is, once you've got that plan in place, is to commit to the plan. We've talked about this on prior episodes. We do not need to be adding to your decision debt. Look at what you've come up with. Figure out the timing and what works for you. Of course, cash flow considerations are real. I'm not trying to ignore those. I am also telling you that if you really want something, you'll find a way to make the money to buy it or to invest in it. That's the beauty of this. I mean, I remember saying to someone once, they were asking me if I was going to invest in something or not, or if I had the money. I think it was my parents actually. Do I have the money to do that? And I was like, I don't know, but if I don't, I'll make the money. They kind of looked at me stunned, because it's just not a mindset that so many people have. But this is a mindset as a business owner. If you want something that you think is important for you to invest in, then the question isn't, when could I afford that? The question is, how can I make the money to make that investment? And when could I do that? How could I do that as quickly as possible? Those are the types of questions you would be asking yourself. So this fifth step is to commit to the plan. Not hem and haw, not, oh, I hope I have enough money to fund this. No, it's, how do I figure out how to fund this and commit to it, which means to cut off all the other options and move forward. That's it. Those are the 5 steps to define and move forward with your investment strategy. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to encourage you for these 3 things. There's really 4 things perhaps to put this episode into action. The first is, do the work that we just talked about, those 5 steps. Do that work for yourself. The second is, go grab one of those quarterly business planners at growthatlas.solutions. This is where you can physically lay out your plan for the next year and next quarter for yourself and your business, so that you've had that thinking time, you've done the iterations, and you know what you're planning to do and when you're planning to do it and why you're planning to do it and how you're going to measure that you've done it and done it well. And then finally, get help. Get help. Whether you work with me or not, find a coach. Honestly, I've had a coach, not the same exact coach, but I've had a coach, if not more than one, continuously for the last 6 or 7 years. And it has made the difference in my business. I will tell you for sure, in the amount of money that I've charged, in the types of offerings that I have, in the confidence that I've been able to create for myself, in the visibility I've created with this podcast and mechanisms that I've built to market and generate leads for my business and add value to consultants. Find a coach. Again, whether that's me or someone else, please find a coach to help you navigate running a business. There's so many moving parts, and it's so important to get help for that. If you want to consider working with me, you can apply for one-on-one coaching. I think as of the time I'm recording this, I've got a few openings left for Q1 of 2026. If you're listening to this at some point in the future, I may have openings. You can go to consultmelissa.com. My first name is spelled Melisa with only one S and one L, and find the application there. And then if you want some additional help specific to lead generation, I am launching a new sprint. I'm so excited for it in January. The registration opens on December 8th. So you'll be able to come in and grab a spot. Those spots are limited. Grab a spot in the next lead gen sprint. You can be doing the sprint with others and create that momentum as we start off the first of the year. It's important to grab a spot early on December 8th. And also you get a bonus of extra time with the entire lead generation method. So you'll be able to review that online and go through it and set yourself up so you can hit the ground running when we start in January. So if you want more information about that and to get on the wait list, if the registration isn't quite open yet when you listen to this, it should be, but in case it isn't, you can go to consultantsprint.com and find the details for registering and or for the wait list, whichever applies when you're listening to this. All right, my friend, so good to have you here today, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.